The road wound for the New Hampshire countryside, a strip of damp pavement cutting between towering pines. The air carried a late autumn bite, the kind that sneaks under a rider's jacket no matter how tightly it's zipped. Greg Lawson hunkered down on his motorcycle, feeling the vibration of the engine humming through his body. It was the kind of ride he liked, solitary, quiet, except for the wind and the steady growl of the bike beneath him. But then the rain came. It started as a mist, just enough to blur the edges of the road and make him squint behind his visor. Then it turned to drizzle, light but steady. Within minutes, the sky split open and the rain fell in sheets, hammering against the road and bouncing up in frantic little splashes. Greg cursed under his breath. His riding jacket was water-resistant, not waterproof, and he could already feel the dampness creeping in. Up ahead, he spotted the dark mouth of an old concrete bridge spanning the road, a railroad bridge, judging by the rust-streaked steel girders above it. He leaned the bike toward the shoulder, rolled under the shelter, and killed the engine. As soon as the noise of the bike faded, he noticed he wasn't alone. A man sat on an overturned milk crate near the far wall of the underpass, his back against the concrete. A tattered green army coat was pulled tight around his thin frame, and a pair of well-worn boots stuck out in front of him, the soles peeling away at the edges. He had a shaggy beard, mostly gray, and a knit cap pulled low over his ears. A small bundle of belongings sat beside him, wrapped in a plastic grocery bag. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The man eyed Greg with the cautious wariness of someone used to being ignored, or worse, run off. Greg tugged off his helmet, shook some of the water from his sleeves, and nodded. "Hell of a rain," he said. The man gave a short, raspy chuckle. "You don't say." Greg leaned against one of the bridge supports, watching the rain hammer the road. He pulled his gloves off and stuffed them in his pockets. "You come through here often?" Greg asked. The man shrugged. "Been here a few weeks. Was further north before that." "You from around here?" "Used to be," the man said. He scratched his beard and shifted on the crate. "Name's Walter." "Greg," he gestured toward his bike. "Just out for a ride. Didn't expect a storm to hit like this." Walter nodded. "Yeah, they sneak up on you this time of year." He studied Greg for a moment, then grunted. "Not often a guy like you stops to chat with a guy like me." Greg raised an eyebrow. "What kind of guy am I?" "The kind with a job, a home, a bike that probably costs more than my last 3 places to sleep." Greg chuckled. "That's fair, but hey, we're both stuck under this bridge. Might as well pass the time." Walter smirked. "Guess so." He pulled a crumpled cigarette from his pocket and rolled it between his fingers. "Used to ride myself. Had an old Indian chief when I was younger." "No kidding," Greg's interest piqued. "What year?" 47. Beautiful machine. Bought it secondhand in the 70s. Spent all my time keeping it running." Greg whistled. "That's a classic. What happened to it?" Walter's expression darkened for a second, but then he gave a nonchalant shrug. "Lost my job. Then lost my house. Had to sell what I could to get by. Bike went first. Broke my heart, but I figured I'd buy another when things turned around." He let out a dry laugh. "Still waiting on that turn." Greg leaned back against the concrete. "That's rough. What kind of work did you do?" "Construction mostly, some welding. Even did a little truck driving for a while." Greg rubbed his chin. "That's all good work. What happened?" Walter exhaled, watching the rain. "Things just fell apart. Had a bad run of luck. Health went south for a bit, work dried up, bills piled up. I tried to keep up, but one day I looked around and everything was gone. Wife left, friends stopped calling. You start sleeping in shelters or under bridges, people stop seeing you as a person." Greg was quiet for a moment. He knew that feeling, in a way. Not to Walter's extent, but close enough. His own life hadn't exactly been a straight road. He'd spent too many nights nursing a bottle after his divorce, wondering where things had gone wrong. If he hadn't had his job, his bike, or a couple of good friends, he might have wound up in the same spot as Walter. "You want to get back on your feet?" Greg asked. Walter scoffed. "What? You got a spare house in your pocket?" "No, but I know people. A buddy of mine runs a construction company. He's always looking for guys who know their way around a job site." Walter gave him a long, skeptical look. "You serious?" Greg shrugged. "Why not? Sounds like you know your stuff." Walter shook his head. "Been out of the game too long. Nobody's gonna hire some half-broke old man who looks like he crawled out of a dumpster." "Not true," Greg said. "My buddy doesn't care about looks. He cares if you can show up and do the work." Walter frowned, his fingers tightening around the cigarette. Greg could see the battle playing out in the man's head, the cautious hope, the fear of getting his hopes up. Greg reached into his pocket and pulled out a card. Look, if you're interested, I'll make a call. I can't promise anything, but I can get you a shot. Walter took the card, turning it over in his fingers. It was damp, smudged from the rain, but the number was still readable. The rain had started to let up, tapering to a drizzle. Walter looked out at the road, then back at Greg. Why are you doing this? Greg sighed. Because somebody once gave me a shot when I needed it. Figured I'd return the favor. Walter stared at the card a moment longer, then tucked it into his coat. I'll think about it. Greg nodded. That's all I'm asking. The rain finally stopped, leaving behind a glistening wet road. Greg pushed off the wall and stretched. I should get moving before it starts up again. Walter nodded. Yeah. He hesitated, then held out a hand. Greg shook it. Walter's grip was strong, calloused, a worker's hand. Thanks, Walter said gruffly. Greg nodded, then swung a leg over his bike, firing up the engine. Take care, Walter. As he rolled out from under the bridge and back onto the road, he caught one last glimpse of the old man watching him go. Maybe Walter would make that call. Maybe he wouldn't. But at least he had a chance. And sometimes that was enough to change everything. Thank you for joining us on The Open Road. If you want even more stories just like this one, remember to like and subscribe. And we'll catch you next time that we're on The Open Road.